Welcome back, chess.com viewers, and we now have some more spicy openings. I haven't done any spicy openings for a while, but I get a lot of requests about interesting ideas in the opening, what people should play in the opening. So I thought we'd have a look at another concept, another interesting way you can play right at the start of the game that I've only just discovered. So this is quite a secret, spicy opening. So I think it could bring you lots of good results. It's very dangerous for black, and we're going to look at this from the white perspective. So what is this spicy opening? Well, it's an opening you play with one e4. And I should tell you that if you want to get some more spicy openings, please go to the library and have a look at my other spicy recommendations where I give a lot of interesting setups with 1 to e4. And this time I've prepared another way of playing against e5. Now, previously, I suggested two ideas here. One was the old romantic King's Gambit, the most romantic of openings, a nice way to try to give up a pawn and get an attack. And you can look at my series on this if you go to the library. I also had a look at the Danish Gambit with d4, a very interesting way to try to bring your pieces into the game very quickly. But this time, we're going to have a look at a gambit called the Belgrade Gambit. And this occurs after the moves knight to f3. And the great thing about this opening is you don't have to learn so much. So it's a perfect opening for the lazy person. And that suits me down to the ground. I'm a lazy chess player. I don't want to learn too much. I just want to move my pieces out, gambit a pawn, checkmate my opponent, and get on with things. So this is a perfect opening for you if you don't want to learn too much theory. So we start with knight to f3. And now, well, the main move is knight to c6. So this is what we're going to concentrate on. Other moves are not so worrying anyway. And now, rather than developing our bishop on f1, which is more commonly played, the Belgrade Gambit starts with knight to c3. So this is the so-called four knights variation. In the next video, which I recommend you look at, we're going to have a peek at other options that black can play here. So if black does not play knight to f6, we'll cover everything else in the other video. So all you really need is this video and the next video, and you're going to have a very dangerous repertoire with e4 and how to meet e5. Now, what is the Belgrade Gambit? Well, here I recommend you start with a move d4. And this is a good way to open up lines, take some control in the center of the board, and get your pieces out quickly. Now, black really only has one decent try here, and this is played in about 90% of games, and that is pawn takes d4. Now, the gambit I'm recommending is forward soldiers, knight to d5. So we bravely throw this knight into the center of the board, trying to attack black's position very quickly. Now, you can play knight takes d4 here, so this is the more commonly played move, but this is not a gambit line. It's not as much fun as what I'm going to recommend, and that is this brave forwards move, knight to d5. Now, the secret I came across, so I'm going to share this secret with you, is that in the main line, and that is with black now capturing on e4, other possibilities will be looked at in the next video. So to make sure you're totally covered, then check out the next video. But just think, what can black do here? Well, black can try to grab this second pawn. And the great thing about this secret opening is that in most opening books, everywhere I've looked, knight takes e4 is the main recommendation. But they don't consider the move I'm going to suggest as a very good move from white, but I think it could be deadly. So in the next video, we'll have a look at the other options, which include knight takes knight, bishop to e7, and even knight to b4. But for now, we're concentrating on black being a very greedy player and grabbing that second pawn in the center of the board. And this is what I think a lot of your opponents will try to do. Look at this brave knight on d5. One of the reasons I like this position, if you're a chess artist, just have a look at the knights here. They have quite a striking picture. You have white knight, black knight, white knight, black knight. That looks quite pretty to me. But our knight is very dangerously placed on d5. So here, in most of the opening books, it's recommended that white plays queen to e2. Now, I don't think this is as good as the move I'm going to suggest you play. And after this move, it's been proven that black can get a better position. Now, the secret that I'm now going to pass on to you, which has only occurred, as far as I can see, one time in the history of chess, is bishop to d3. And I think this is an excellent move. Now, you are 2 pawns down. What is the idea? Well, of course, you're developing a piece with tempo and you're creating a threat against the black knight on e4. We are also getting ready to castle quickly, getting our king safe and bringing our rook on h1 to the e file, starting an attack like this. And just quick pressure, quick attack against black's position. So what should black do here? I believe there are 3 options that black might try. So let's have a look at these options let's start with the worst option. Now, the worst option, I believe, is f5. This is aimed at trying to stabilize the black knight in the center of the board. Black thinks, well, if I can keep my knight on e4, then I can block the e file up. But this is not a very good move, in my opinion. And we should continue in standard fashion. And this is what I suggest you do in all these lines. If you're in doubt, then don't worry. If you forget what you're supposed to play, some simple rules can help you out. Develop your pieces quickly, create threats, and just try to get your rook to the e file as soon as possible. So let's follow that idea now. Castles. And now black plays bishop to e7. What else can black do? And here actually a clever idea, because another thing we always need to do when playing chess is consider what our opponent's trying to achieve. And if we can stop that, it's a good idea to stop that. So with bishop to e7, what do you think black's trying to achieve here? It should be pretty obvious that black's trying to castle and run away with his king. So a great way to stop that plan is bishop to c4. And this, according to my analysis, according to the computers, leads to a big advantage to white. For example, we can simply win back one of our pawns by going knight takes d4. Or if you want to, you can try rook e1, and then a very clever move, knight to d2. And both of these moves are aimed at removing this strong blockader in the center of the board, the knight on e4. So bishop to c4 is a very good move. For example, something like d6. And again, you have these 2 options. The simple knight takes d4. And even here, you're going to go f3, removing this knight. The black king is stuck on the e file. So something like, well, let's say he tries to develop his bishop to d7. Here, you can even play f3. And now, if the knight moves, your rook comes to the e file with a monstrous attack. So this is not a very good line for black. So let's discount the move f5 now against this secret weapon of bishop d3, only been played once before. What else can black play? Well, I think his second best option is to retreat the knight back where it came from. So knight to f6. So what should we do here? Of course, we'd like to castle and go rook e1 very quickly, but in this current position, our knight has been attacked on d5. If we simply exchange on f6, we're swapping off our very powerful knight, the rock and roll knight on d5, and we want to keep our rock and roll knight because it's our best piece. So how can we discoordinate black's position here? Have a little think, even pause the video if you need to, and think what you would play here. Well, I think an excellent move here is queen to e2 check, because now black has to put a piece on e7. So let's say bishop to e7, and now we can take on f6 in this structure, because the difference being we double black's pawns, making it very hard for the black king to castle. And now after we simply castle kingside, we have a very nice attack. Now, there's an important plan that you should remember here, because you are still 2 pawns down, but even a computer likes this position for white. And the important plan is, let's say black plays a move like d5, is to first go rook e1. So we're increasing our pressure against the black king. Now, it'd be suicidal for black to castle there. That is just asking to be completely crushed, which we might as well help him do by moving our knight on f3 out of the way so our queen can race over to attack the king. Something along the lines of knight to h4, and our queen can rush over to h5, checkmate, thank you very much, good game. So black shouldn't castle. Let's say he plays a move like bishop to e6. That looks very sensible, blocking the e-file. Now, the important plan you have to remember here is a 2-stage plan. First of all, bishop to b5, pinning the knight on c6, stopping the knight from moving. And the whole point of this idea is to play knight takes d4 next, and then we crash through on e6 or c6. For example, let's say black tries to run away over to the queen side. Let's take that pawn on d4. We're only 1 pawn down, but we have this great attack on the e-file. Now, if black tries to escape, run away over there, well, how do we crash through now? White is completely winning in this position. Again, pause the video if you need to. Bishop takes c6. Black has to open up his king. And look at this ugly pawn structure. That's disgusting. And now queen to a6 check. King to b8, knight takes c6 check. Thank you very much. So, as we can see, another dangerous line for black. If he tries, after this, a new idea of playing bishop to d3 in this position, retreating his knight to f6, you have this very disruptive check, queen to e2 check. A key move to remember. Then, if you follow this up with castles, rook to e1, and this plan, bishop to b5, knight takes d4. These are the key moves to remember in this variation. Now we come on to what I consider to be the best defensive idea from black. And this is the computer's first choice. And we all have to follow the computer a little bit nowadays. Knight to c5. Now, the only game I could ever find in this opening was played between a player whose rating was 2,300 exactly with white, and black was the great Bologan. Now, if you haven't heard of Bologan, Bologan's a grandmaster from Moldova, and his FIDE rating is about 2650. So he was out-rating white by about 350 points. Now, that is a serious number. But in this game, he got absolutely crushed. Crushed like a fly in the middle of a nuclear bomb. Now, that's a big load of crushing. So let's have a look what white can do here. And what's black's idea about putting his knight on c5? I think his best idea is to try to get the knight to e6, therefore blocking up the e-file and trying to create a solid defensive structure. How do we continue? Well, now there's no threats to our position, so we continue as we have done, as I suggested at the start, castles. Rook e1 check is our next idea with a quick attack. Now, I think knight to e6 is the best move here. Now, black can try a move like bishop to e7, trying to get his king castled, but he has to be extremely careful in these positions. Let's continue in normal fashion. Rook to e1, and this creates some pressure along the e-file. And now, what happens if black decides to castle here? Well, we see a typical idea for this variation, and this is a key tactical point that you have to remember. Let me give you a little hint. Greek gift. So that's quite a big hint, actually. That's a massive hint. So in this position, white can start an attack against the black king with a typical sacrificial idea. Can you see the idea? The idea is, stage one, take on e7 with check. Black has to recapture, and now we can start an offensive against the black king. Bishop takes h7 check. This is the typical Greek gift idea. That's a spicy move. King takes h7, and now we bring in the cavalry. Now we bring in the reinforcements, knight to g5, big check. And this leads to a devastating attack. For example, this is a typical Greek gift idea. Stage 1 is sacrifice the bishop on h7. Stage 2 is bring in the knight. And stage 3 is bring in the madam, bring in the queen to finish the show. For example, king goes up to g6 is one idea. What happens if the king goes back? King to g8. Well, now stage 3, the queen flies into the attack. Threatening queen to h7, checkmate. If black tries to run away with rook e8, it's checkmate now in 3 moves. Can you see the checkmate? Again, a little test for you. What's the quickest way to checkmate here? Queen h7 check. King f8 is forced. The king has placed itself in a box here. Queen to h8 check. Only one way to defend. Knight to g8. And now a beautiful checkmate. Knight to h7, checkmate. So we can just see how deadly this idea is. And this is an idea we're going to come back to in just 1 second. Now, if the black king tries to run bravely into the middle of the board, you should have a smile on your face, because it's always nice to see our opponent's king doing the run of shame around the middle of the board. I mean, this king is naked, and no one wants to run around town naked. It's just embarrassing. So how do we punish this king now? Well, let's bring in our queen again. Where should we bring our queen? Queen to g4, threatening a very dangerous discovered attack with a knight. And really, black is in all sorts of trouble here. If he tries f5 attacking the queen, our queen can just step back, keeping a discovered attack on the king. And now, well, f4 could be tried. Our queen can now go back to g4. We're still waiting to play a knight check. And if something like d5, the bishop is released against the queen, but this naked king has nowhere to run after knight to e6 check. And this is going to be followed by queen takes g7 with a checkmate attack. One very funny line here, which I looked at. Look how many pieces white is about to take here. Let's say the king goes to f7. Well, queen takes g7, check. That's one piece we've just taken. The king has to go to e8. Queen takes f8, check. This is like Pac-Man. If you can remember the old Pac-Man game, when the Pac-Man figure just went and just ate all those weird yellow balls. Well, this is what your queen's doing here. Look at it go. Super queen. Queen takes d8, check. Queen takes c7, check. Queen takes c5, check. Okay, that's enough. That's a Pac-Man queen. Very strong queen there. So again, just showing how dangerous this line is. So let's go back and have a look at what I consider to be black's best defensive try. So if we go all the way back from start, just to accustom ourselves to the opening moves, this is the Belgrade Gambit, and this is a secret weapon I'm showing you. I was going to save it for myself to play, but I'll share it with you here. Hopefully you'll get a chance to play this. And this is after e5, one of the most common opening moves. We go for the 2-knight starting position with knight to c3. Knight to f6 now is the most common move, what you'll face in most games. Other options in the next video. And now d4, opening up lines. Pawn takes d4, and now we have crazy knight jumping into this central square. And the main line is knight takes e4, but now my secret move, bishop to d3. Knight c5 I consider the main option, and here we aim to castle, get a rook to e1, attack, 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 castles. So what happens if knight to e6 is played, trying to block the e-file? Well, we now continue with rook to e1. This is a new move, never to be played before, so we're creating a new position after only 8 moves here. Now, how would black play here? Well, black should try to castle kingside. And his position is reasonably solid. How should you aim to play this position as white? Well, I have a general rule when playing chess. I have a crash, bang, wallop rule. If I can crash, bang, wallop my way through my opponent's defenses and win immediately, great, happy days. But if I need to bring reinforcements in, then let's build up the foundation. You can't start a great attack without a great foundation. It's like that parable from the Bible about the person building his house on sand. not a very good foundation, and the house obviously fell apart. You need to build your house on concrete. So my plan here is to go bishop d2 first, therefore getting my last piece out. And I want to follow this by the move c3. So bishop d2, c3, and then ideally at some point I want to transfer my bishop to this long diagonal. Let's see this in action. Bishop to e7 from black, bishop to d2 from white. So developing my last piece, getting ready to play c3. Don't worry about the 2 pawns you're down. Checkmate is the aim of the game. That's what we're going for. Let's say black castles. He might breathe a sigh of relief here. Well, we play c3. And in this position, there are 2 options for black. Option number 1, pawn takes c3. And the other option, let's just test your knowledge of what you've learnt so far, is if black tries to hold the d4 square with a move like bishop to c5. Now here, you're gambiting, you're attacking. When you're gambiting and attacking, you need to open up the position. So pawn takes d4, opening up lines. Now let's say black goes knight takes d4. What can be more natural than that? A little quiz for you here. What have you learnt so far? White to play. What should white play in this position to start a devastating attack? Remember the attacking move we tried last time? Try to solve this yourself. Try to analyze some variations. Pause the video if you need to and restart when you think you've got a good idea about what you should be doing here. Well, it's that crafty trick again, the Greek gift. Bishop takes h7 check. And we have this 3-stage idea. The bishop moves, what happens next? The knight moves, and then the queen, the most powerful of all creatures, can move into the board. So, for example, king takes h7, stage 2, knight to g5 check. And our queen is coming flying out. So, black has 2 options. What if knight takes g5? Well, here, let's bring in the queen. Queen to h5 check. Only one move here, king to g8. Yes, you're a piece and 2 pawns down, but you're really attacking with devastating effect here. Look at all these pieces of blacks. They're all sleeping here. They need to get themselves out of bed. They're lazy pieces. Lazy pieces. And we continue attacking. Bishop takes g5, attacking the queen. The queen has nowhere to go, so black has to block the bishop. And after f6, there's a devastating move here. Can you see the move? Again, a little test for you. The devastating move is bishop takes f6. Crash, bang, wallop. We'll come back to this position in a minute. So I just want to go, if we go back now 5 moves, let's have another look at this idea. So the idea is after bishop c5, we take on d4. Knight takes d4. And now the Greek gift. Bishop takes h7 check. And then we bring in the knight. Knight to g5 check. Now, last time we had a look at knight takes knight. What happens if the black king moves backwards? Well, again, we bring the queen into the action. Queen to h5. Threatening checkmate. And now we're going to get a transposition. So we're going to get to the last position through a slightly different move order. And after f6, let's now have a look at a beautiful finish to this game. Bishop takes f6. Beautiful move. You're really ripping apart the protection of the black king. This black king, you need to take the protection apart, destroy the bodyguards. Bishop takes f6 does this beautifully. Now, what can black do? Well, if black plays rook takes f6, you have rook to e8 check, winning the position, winning points, winning the game. If pawn takes f6, we've opened up the black king, so we can come in with a series of checks. Queen g6 check, king h8 is forced, and now a very important attacking idea, the rook swinger. You can't checkmate just with one piece. You need to bring in reinforcements. Remember the crash bang wallop rule. If you can't crash bang wallop, look for reinforcements. Rook to e3. And this rook is swinging around to h3. That would be checkmate. If black desperately tries to cover that square, we have checkmate here. Can you see the checkmate? Another little test for you. Pause the video if you need to. Queen to h5 check. And this keeps the squares all covered here, so the black king can't escape. King g7, rook to g3 check. Only one move for black, bishop to g4. And we might as well take that bishop and give checkmate. So I think that's enough for now on this opening variation. I want you to go and investigate it. The only other thing I'll just show you very quickly, actually, if we go back in this line, I'll run through it one more time just to give you an overview of everything and to really try and reinforce some of the ideas that we've learned throughout the course of this video. Well, this is my dangerous weapon, my newfound, I've been exploring chess a little bit recently. I found this great idea I'm sharing with you, and it's in the 4 knights. And the main line with pawn takes knight to d5, we'll look at black's other options in a minute. I must warn you that, I think black can equalize in some of the variations, but that normally happens in gambit lines, and we can have a lot of fun trying this out anyway. Now, if black follows the recommended book line, we play this new move, bishop to d3. If black tries the best defense, we simply develop. And now remember, we need to get our bishop out. So bishop to d2 is coming. First, of course, we put our rook on the open line. Now bishop to d2, excellent move. Now we have to open up the center, c3. And you have all these ideas of this Greek gift. These Greek gifts work a lot better, a little tip, when black's bishop on e7 has moved away from defending the g5 square. So if it moves away to c5, then the Greek gift works. Now, if black takes on c3, this is maybe one line we just cover. I like the move, bishop takes c3. Look at these sniper bishops. These bishops are just cutting across the board. And if something like d6, I think a very strong idea here. Well, you have a number of ideas. You have queen to c2. I like the move queen to a4, trying to swing this queen around. And you can try this position out, have a lot of fun, leads to some very interesting attacking games. And I love this opening. I can't wait to try it myself. And I just wanted to share those ideas with you in this Belgrade Gambit. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my other spicy openings. There's a number of them. They're little sort of tricky lines. You can try white. They should give you some quick, aggressive, gambity wins. A lot of fun to play. None of this boring positional chess. Check, 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 checkmate. That's the way to play chess. And I'll be back very shortly with another video that will just cover black's other options in this variation. Goodbye for now. Welcome to the second video in this spicy range on the Belgrade Gambit. So if you watched the previous video, if you watch this video, you've got everything you need to go and play this exciting gambit line. So the Belgrade Gambit occurs after e4, and now black plays e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now we enter into what is called the 4 knights position, and that's with knight to c3. Now, I expect everyone has seen the move bishop to b5 here, which is the typical Spanish move, Ruy Lopez move. Now, in my opinion, the problem with playing this is that there's lots of theory to learn. You really have to basically memorize a number of books, which can't be so much fun. I don't want to memorize books. And also, you might face the boring Berlin defense. So the move I prefer here is knight to c3. With some very aggressive ideas in mind. Now, if we first look at the Belgrade Gambit, then we'll come back to other options that black can try here. So the Belgrade Gambit is with knight to f6, which I think you'll face most of the time, and now d4, opening up the center of the board. And here, what can black play? Well, black really has to take on d4. I don't think there's any other moves worth considering. And the Belgrade Gambit is with knight to d5, this brave knight jump into the center of the board. Now, hopefully you watched the previous video and we covered the main move there, knight takes e4, where white has a number of exciting options, but the simple bishop to d3 gives a very good attacking position. Now, what else can black play here? So let's think about this logically. Well, as white, you're really just trying to take back this pawn on d4 at some stage, and maybe also develop with your bishop to g5, develop, attack, attack, attack. Your bishop on f1, where should that go? Well, either to d3 or to c4, both aggressive squares. Now, the main moves for black here include bishop to e7, which is a very solid way for black to play. I don't think it's particularly great. Knight takes d5, which has been played probably the most often, so we'll have a look at that. And then the final move, which I think is actually black's best defensive try, the very bizarre counter knight jump, knight to b.
Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. But you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose.
So you really need to know what to do against each of these three possibilities black can play. So let's have a look. Well, bishop to e7 is a very solid choice, but I think white should have a nice safe advantage and keep attacking, because that's what we want to do. We want to keep rocking and rolling, keep attacking, keep the pressure on our opponents by simply playing knight takes d4. And our knights are very aggressively placed now, with the knight on d4 having two options where it's going to go next. It will either go to b5 or to f5. For example here, if black gets greedy and now takes on
That is how I feel when the mirror shows me a stranger. Yeah. And I know they're just fragments of a world where your absence all I get to see. Take me back to the planet where you and I are still meant to be. 'Cause I know you'll come. was so fast, all tied up like a captive. I'm on to you. Used to pay to my life, standing on rainbows, playing it cool. I don't felt this in ages, and I've no more patience. So won't you please stay a bit longer? You're making me stronger, making me stronger.
On e4, well, this is a very bad move because our knight on d4 can cause some chaos by jumping to b5. And there's no good way for black to stop an absolute disaster occurring on c7 there. So it'd be very greedy for black to grab that pawn. What else can black play? Well, if black castles here, trying to go for quick development, I'd recommend the new move here, knight to f5. And this looks very dangerous. Look at those knights increasing the pressure on black's position. And one of the points is, if knight takes e4, well, we can fly the major piece into the game, queen to g4, threatening checkmate and the capture of the black knight. What else can black do here? Well, there's not really many good moves, because if he goes knight takes d5, we capture with our pawn, and we're attacking the knight. In the worst case here, we can simply take the bishop next move, castle our king, and we have the advantage of the two bishops and a very advanced d-pawn. So again, this is a variation that should not scare us. So let's just go back and have a look at this again so we can reinforce the ideas you should be playing. So bishop to e7, what do you play here? You simply grab that pawn on d4 back. Now, black in this position, probably his best move is to take on d5. And after this, we recapture. And after some trades, I would say white has a very small advantage here. You want to go bishop to e2, castle your king. In this variation, the bishop comes to e2 just to stop any annoying checks that might occur to your king on the e file. And we have this advanced d-pawn giving us a figurehead to attack with and a slightly better position. So this is a nice sort of safe way, but still aggressive way to play for white. And we're just going to cover all possibilities so you don't get tricked out. So really, that's after bishop to e7, that's all you need to know. You simply take the pawn back on d4 and attack. Put your knight on f5 if you get a chance, castle. So don't worry about bishop to e7. Now, what about this move, knight takes d5? Well, I don't think this is a particularly great move here. And what you should play, as always, is go pawn takes d5. And now the black knight has to move to a misplaced square. If the knight moves back to e7, black is creating this coffin around his king. And that king is really suffocating on e8 there. And after a simple move like queen takes d4, how can black get castled? It's a very bad position. And we're going to simply move our bishop, get castled, And as in the previous video, put our rook on e1, attack, attack, attack. So black should probably try knight to b4 here. And just be careful that you do not play queen takes d4. That's the kind of move that if you played in a game, you'd have to go and have a little cry in the corner of the room when your opponent plays knight takes c2 check. That is embarrassing. We've all done it. We've all had a little cry at some stage in our chess lives, some more than others. I know that for a fact because I tend to cry quite a lot, you know, when I play moves like this. Not so much anymore, thankfully, but that's a crying move. Don't avoid that one. Just don't fall for something like that. So instead, what should we do? Well, you have the safe option here of defending your pawn on d5. When, again, you can castle quickly, get your rook to e1. This looks very good. And even knight takes d4 looks nice. Okay, you're gambiting the pawn, but this is called the Belgrade Gambit, so you have to be up for a spicy challenge here. And if knight takes d5, we can go bishop to c4, attack, attack, attack. And we're going to castle, get a rook to e1, check, attack, attack, attack. And this is a very attractive position for white with big attack coming. So black shouldn't really, after this brave Belgrade knight jump, knight to d5, capture on d5. And this really only leaves one option, and this is black's best option. Knight to b4. And I have to be honest, I don't believe that many people will play this move, knight to b4, because it looks kind of ridiculous. Why move a knight again? Why move it to b4? It's kind of anti-opening, anti-foundations. And here, well, white has a number of moves. The line I suggest you play here is to simply take on f6 check, queen takes f6, and now develop with speed. Bishop to c4. And before I recapture this pawn, it's worth pointing out again, there's another crying move here. If you play knight takes d4, black has a typical trick here. And this is a trick that you should really know. Black to play and to win material. Can you see the trick? Pause the video if you need to. Queen takes d4. And you would shed a little tear after recapturing the queen. Yes, you've won a queen temporarily. But then this big fork, knight to c2 check, winning the queen back. Black will be a piece up, piece and a pawn up even, and you have a lost position. So do not be in a rush to recapture this pawn on d4. The best way to play is to develop, castle your king, maybe even try ideas with e5, bishop g5, attack that exposed king, and only when the timing's right, win the pawn back on d4. For example here, bishop to c4, and now some line with maybe d6. And now I like this little safety first move because, again, you might know from my last video, we always have to consider what our opponent's trying to do. And here our opponent, after his move d6, is freeing the bishop on c8. And that bishop would love to fly into the game on g4. So let's stop that plan. h3, and now if black plays a move like knight to c6, trying to guard his pawn, I suggest we castle, bishop e7. And now let's bring our pieces out with attacking ideas. How can you bring your last piece out? This is the only piece we need to bring into the game. Bishop to g5, good attacking move. And after something like queen g6, bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop, well, we can simply win the pawn back with a nice space advantage here and a very pleasant position. But there is a trick here. I was trying to do a little trick for you there. What happens if you do take this pawn? What happens there? Can you see a trick? Uh-oh, well, bishop takes h3 would happen when there's a queen takes g2 checkmate idea. So first of all, a good move here is to either move your king, or even better is queen to d3. And this sets a counter trick. That pawn's going to go on d4 at some point. But the counter trick now, which black can easily fall into, if he plays bishop takes h3, winning a pawn, threatening checkmate, we have the counter trick knight to h4. This defends the checkmate, attacks the queen, and the reason we moved our queen to d3 is we can take the bishop next move, winning a piece. So all these lines after queen d3, I think this is black's best line, but white is doing absolutely fine, still an aggressive position. And to be honest, that's all you really need to know in the Belgrade Gambit. So just to recap, we're going to have a look at other options black can play in this position very briefly in a second. But just to recap, after knight to f6, you first play this dashing move in the center with Derek the d-pawn. Derek the d-pawn comes flying out to d4. Now, if black recaptures on d4, our knight now dashes into the center. Against most moves, you simply want to win the pawn on d4 back. So this is your standard idea. Only against knight to b4 do you now take on f6 and develop castle, try to stop black's bishop coming out from c8 and win your pawn back on d4. And that's the Belgrade Gambit for you, another spicy opening to add to your repertoire. Very quickly, what else can black play after the opening moves e4, e5, knight to c3? What else can black play here? Well, a general rule here. If black plays a passive move, like d6, bishop to e7, something a little bit silly like this, then you should play d4 anyway. For example, let's say d6. This doesn't look very good because it traps the bishop on f8 in. Now d4. And after pawn takes d4, well, there's no need to jump into the center with our knight now. You can try it if you want to. It's probably not a bad move, but simply recapturing the pawn gives us a space advantage. We have free development and a nice edge here. Now, there's one very cute line here, which I have to show you because it's a really kind of piece of chess art, and that is with g6, where black is trying to stop you going d4. Now, what is the rule if black doesn't bring his knight on g8 out? What is the rule you should play here? d4, of course. Now, after d4, let's say black takes on d4. Well, again, knight takes d4 gives white a small advantage. But in this position, because black has played g6, which creates weaknesses on these highlighted squares, the dark squares, because he's put his pawns on light squares, therefore weakening the dark squares, we can now play in Belgrade Gambit fashion, knight to d5. And there's a little trick here. For example, if black is completely blind or still waking up, he might try something like knight to e7. Oh dear, knight to f6, checkmate, thank you very much. Now that is embarrassing. That's one trick. And what about something like bishop to g7? Was another devastating trick here, which Karyakin, the very strong player from Russia, once fell into. And that is bishop to g7. And we can see we're attacking on the dark squares. And now if knight to e7, black's trying to castle his king, we have the very strong move, knight takes d4. And in a blitz game, a speed game, Karyakin, once in a very similar position, now played bishop takes knight, thinking I've just won a piece. What is white's idea? Well, maybe you can tell me, what is white's devastating idea here? And it's a very pretty checkmate. Queen takes d4. What? Giving up the queen? Knight takes d4. Knight to f6 check. Black only has one square to go to. And now this very crafty checkmate. Bishop to h6, checkmate. Thank you very much. 10-move checkmate. So the simple rule is, against most of black's main moves here, so if black doesn't go knight to f6, you should go d4. When you can either take back on d4 if black recaptures, or try the brave knight to d5 move. Now, one more little thing that a lot of beginners play here, bishop to c5. There is a standard trick against this move here. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. The standard trick against this move is knight takes e5. And the idea, it looks like this loses a piece, but it doesn't actually lose a piece, because the knight takes e5, you now have this move d4, creating a fork in the center of the board. And in this position, white gains a very good initiative and advantage. Now, black has also tried here, realizing that he's going to lose a piece back to d4, also tried bishop takes f2 in this position, which may look a little bit scary because you have to walk your king out only slightly, though. We're not going to go on a crazy mission to the North Pole with our king. That's too much. But black doesn't have enough pieces attacking here, so our king is safe. For example, knight takes knight, and now pawn to d4. And we're kicking back the black pieces. The queen check somewhere doesn't help. We can just go g3 to block it. And if the knight retreats, we can do a technique here called castling by hand. And that is where we move our bishop, move our rook, and then move our king back. For example, bishop to c4, a great square for the bishop. The reason white is better here is because of his control of the center. Look at that lovely control. And now your next two moves is rook f1, king g1. And we've done this technique called castling by hand. And again, a very good position for white. And really, I'm not going to overcomplicate things. That is the Belgrade Gambit for you. So after e4, e5, my other two gambits in the spicy range can be seen in the library. But this knight to f3 move is my new discovery, with the idea of going for a 4 knights position and then punting away with d4 and knight to d5. And I really think you can have a lot of fun with this. A lot of good attacking ideas. And as the Rolling Stones say, it's only rock and roll. And this is what you got to do. This is spicy rock and roll chess. Give it a go. It'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully you need everything through these 2 videos. I'm sure you'll have some lovely wins if you try this idea. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments below. I can't always answer the comments in the chat because there's a lot of comments. I don't always have time, but I do try to read them. Even if you hate the video, I don't mind. I got thick skin. You can tell me. And tell me what other videos you'd like to see me do in future, because I do listen to you and I do want to take your suggestions. And I know I haven't done a spicy opening for a while, so I thought we'd get back with a little spicy idea there. Thank you very much for viewing. Until next time.